Have you ever been cruising down the highway and suddenly found yourself stuck behind a brand new pickup truck that costs more than the average home? You know exactly the one I'm talking about. That gleaming behemoth with chrome on every surface, leather seats that probably set someone back more than your monthly rent, and a monthly payment that would make any mortgage lender break out in a cold sweat. And here's the part that really gets under my skin. The person behind the wheel likely brings home less money than you do. So what's really going on here? How are everyday people somehow managing to swing these jaw-dropping car payments that seem to defy basic arithmetic? My name is Gen Z Invest, and I spend way more time than I probably should thinking about money and the financial choices people make. If you've ever found yourself wondering how your neighbor can afford that $70,000 pickup while complaining about the price of eggs, go ahead and hit that subscribe button and give this video a thumbs up if it helps clear up this modern-day puzzle. Now, before we get into the nuts and bolts of how people are pulling this off, let me set the stage for what we're really dealing with here. The average car payment in America has officially entered territory that would have been considered downright insane just 10 years ago. We're talking monthly payments that are higher than what a lot of people shell out for rent, and yet, somehow, millions of Americans are putting pen to paper every single month and driving off the lot in vehicles that cost more than the typical household earns in a year. But here's where it gets really fascinating. Most of these folks aren't secretly sitting on piles of cash or hiding their wealth. They're not crypto millionaires or trust fund heirs. They're teachers, nurses, mechanics, retail workers, office employees, regular people with regular jobs who've somehow figured out a way to make the numbers add up, or at least convince themselves they have. The reality is, there's an entire system designed to make these impossible payments feel doable, and wrapping your head around how that system operates isn't just about satisfying curiosity. It's about protecting yourself from making a financial move that could throw your future off track for the next 7 to 10 years. Let's start with the most obvious question: what kind of numbers are we actually talking about here? Because whenever I share the average car payment figures, people usually assume I'm pulling them out of thin air. The average car payment has climbed past $700 a month. That's $700 not for a luxury ride or some exotic sports car. That's the average payment for a standard new car bought by a regular person. But it gets even steeper when you zero in on trucks and SUVs, which have basically become the default choice for most American buyers. Those payments routinely sail past $900 a month. And it's not at all unusual to see payments above $1,200. That's $1,200 every single month for 6, 7, even 8 years. We're talking total payments that exceed $80,000 over the life of the loan, and that's before you even factor in insurance, upkeep, and gas. Now, you might be thinking, well, Gen Z Invests, maybe people are just earning a whole lot more these days. Maybe wages have climbed enough to support these kinds of payments. And if that's what you're thinking, I hate to be the one to burst your bubble, but that's not what's happening at all. The median household income has gone up, sure, but nowhere near enough to justify these payment levels using any kind of traditional financial logic. So how are people doing it? The answer lies in a mix of factors that have fundamentally changed the way Americans buy cars. And none of these factors are exactly good news for the people signing those loan papers. First up, let's talk about loan terms. Remember when a car loan was 3 years, maybe 4 if you really stretched it? Those days are as dead as the flip phone. Today's car loans routinely stretch 6, 7, even 8 years into the future. Some lenders are even offering 10-year car loans, which honestly sounds like something straight out of a financial horror flick. The appeal is obvious. If you stretch that $60,000 truck payment over 8 years instead of 4, the monthly payment drops by a huge margin. Suddenly, that truck that would have demanded a $1,500 monthly payment over 4 years starts to look manageable at $900 over 8 years. The monthly figure seems reasonable, which is exactly what the buyer focuses on. But here's what most people don't stop to consider while they're sitting in that dealership. By stretching out the loan term, they're not just lowering the monthly payment, they're dramatically increasing the total amount. they'll end up paying for the vehicle. That $900 payment over 8 years adds up to over $86,000. Compare it to about $72,000 if they'd gone with the 4-year loan. That's an extra $14,000 just for the convenience of a lower monthly payment. Even worse, they'll still be making payments on that truck long after it's worth a fraction of what they originally paid. Cars lose value fast, especially in the first few years. By year 5 or 6 of that 8-year loan, they'll owe significantly more than the vehicle is actually worth. They'll be stuck in what's called negative equity, unable to sell or trade the vehicle without writing a check to cover the gap. But extended loan terms are only the beginning of how people are making these payments work. The second major piece of the puzzle is the rise of 0% financing and other promotional interest rates. Walk into any dealership and you'll see signs plastered everywhere advertising 0% APR for qualified buyers. Sounds incredible, right? Free money to buy that new truck. Here's the thing about those 0% offers that dealers definitely don't want you to understand. They're not actually free money. The cost of that financing is baked right into the price of the vehicle. You're either paying full sticker price and getting 0% financing, or you're getting a discount on the car and paying a market rate interest, but you're not getting both. More importantly, those 0% offers usually come with strict qualification rules and shorter loan terms. The people who actually qualify for 0% financing are typically the same people who could afford to pay cash for the vehicle anyway. For everyone else, the interest rates on these stretched-out car loans can be hefty, especially if their credit isn't spotless. Then there's the trading game, which has become a bigger and bigger factor in how people manage these hefty car payments. Here's how it usually plays out. Someone buys a new car with a 6 or 7-year loan. After 3 or 4 years, they're bored with the car or want something newer, but they still owe more on the loan than the car is worth. So what do? They roll that negative equity into a new loan for an even more expensive vehicle. This creates a cycle where people are constantly paying for cars they no longer own while simultaneously taking on debt for new ones. Their loan balances keep growing even though they're making payments every month. It's like a financial hamster wheel where the harder you run, the further behind you fall. Dealers love this setup because it creates customers for life. Once someone is caught in the negative equity loop, they become a captive audience for new vehicle purchases. They can't afford to break free because doing so would mean writing a check for thousands of dollars just to escape their current loan. But perhaps the most worrying trend is how completely normal these extreme car payments have become. People who would never dream of spending $1.200 a month on anything else somehow talk themselves into believing it's a reasonable cost for transportation. Think about it this way. If someone told you they were spending $1,200 a month on coffee, you'd probably stage an intervention. If they said they were dropping that much on clothes every month, you'd assume they had a serious shopping habit. But somehow when it's a car payment, we just nod and say, well, you need reliable transportation. This normalization didn't happen by chance. It's the result of decades of marketing that's convinced Americans that their vehicle is an extension of who they are. Your truck isn't just transportation, it's a statement about your identity. It signals that you're successful, dependable, hardworking. And if you're not driving something impressive, well, what does that say about you? The automotive industry has become incredibly skilled at tapping into these psychological buttons. They don't sell cars anymore. They sell lifestyles, dreams, and social standing. That commercial showing the rugged truck conquering mountains isn't selling you transportation. It's selling you the fantasy that you're the kind of person who conquers mountains, even if the closest you ever get to off-roading is parking on the grass at the county fair. This emotional pull makes it much easier for people to justify payments that would otherwise seem completely irrational. When you're not just buying a truck but buying into an identity, suddenly that $900 payment feels like an investment in yourself rather than a financial blunder. But let's circle back to the practical side of how people are actually making these payments fit into their monthly budgets. Because even with extended terms and emotional justifications, $700 to $1.200 is still a massive chunk of change for most households. This is where things get really creative. And by creative, I mean potentially disastrous for long-term financial well-being. Many people are essentially reshaping their entire financial lives around their car payment. They treat it like a mortgage payment and rearrange everything else to accommodate it. I've seen people move into smaller apartments or stick with roommates longer than they planned just to keep up with their dream truck payment. They'll eat instant noodles for lunch every day while driving to work in a vehicle that costs more than some people's homes. They'll skip vacations, avoid eating out, and put off other major purchases, all to support a car payment that eats up 25 to 30% of their take-home pay. Some people are picking up second jobs specifically to cover their vehicle expenses. They'll drive for rideshare companies or deliver food on weekends using their expensive truck to generate the income needed to pay for that same expensive truck. It's like a weird form of automotive servitude where your car becomes both your master and your way to earn a living. Others are dipping into retirement accounts or taking loans against their 401k to make down payments or cover repair costs. They're borrowing from their future selves to fund their current transportation fantasies. And since most people are awful at calculating the true cost of early retirement withdrawals, they don't realize they might be sacrificing hundreds of thousands in future wealth for a truck that will be worth next to nothing in 10 years. Then there's the credit card shuffle that's become more and more common. People will put maintenance, repairs, insurance, and gas on credit cards to free up cash for their monthly car payment. They're essentially using high-interest debt to subsidize their transportation costs, which is like using a blowtorch to light a cigarette. Technically, it works, but it's probably not the smartest move. The most worrying trend I've come across is people taking out personal loans or home equity loans to cover down payments or negative equity from previous vehicles. They're using their homes to buy cars, which completely misses the point of both assets. Your house should be building wealth over time. Your car should be getting you from point A to point B as efficiently as possible. When you start using your house to fund your car habit, you've got the equation backwards. But here's where the story gets even more interesting. Many of the people making these extreme sacrifices for their car payments aren't just doing it for one vehicle, they're doing it for multiple vehicles. The average American household now owns more cars than licensed drivers, which is mathematically impressive and financially terrifying. It's not unusual to find families juggling 2 or 3 car payments at the same time. Dad has his work truck, Mom has her SUV for the kids, and maybe there's a third vehicle for the teenager or for weekend adventures. Suddenly, we're talking about combined car payments that exceed what most people pay for housing. These families have essentially created their own personal auto financing companies, except instead of making money, they're bleeding cash every month. They're managing multiple depreciation schedules, insurance policies, maintenance calendars, and loan terms. It's like running a small business, except the business loses money every day and its inventory becomes worthless over time. The psychological toll of managing multiple car payments is both fascinating and unsettling. People become experts at juggling due dates and minimum payments, but they lose sight of the bigger picture. They'll celebrate paying off one car loan while simultaneously taking on 2 new ones. They measure success by their ability to keep all the plates spinning rather than questioning whether those plates need to be spinning at all. And then there's the insurance piece that most people completely underestimate when they're figuring out what they can afford. Insuring a $60,000 truck costs significantly more than insuring a
$20,000 sedan.
Adding comprehensive coverage, collision coverage, gap insurance, and all the other protections recommended for expensive vehicles. And you're looking at insurance premiums that can easily top to $100 a month. For families with multiple pricey vehicles, insurance costs can approach or even exceed $500 a month. That's $6,000 a year just for the privilege of legally driving their depreciating assets on public roads. Many people focus so hard on negotiating the monthly payment that they completely forget to account for the ongoing insurance costs until they're sitting in the insurance agent's office getting a wake-up call. Maintenance costs present another surprise that catches a lot of people off guard. Modern vehicles, especially trucks and SUVs, are incredibly complex machines packed with advanced technology. sophisticated emission systems, and premium components. When something breaks, and it will break, the repair bills can be staggering. A simple brake job on a modern truck can easily run $800 to $1,200. Transmission issues can set you back $5,000 or more, and if you're unlucky enough to need major engine work, you could be looking at repair bills north of $10,000. Many people making extreme car payments have zero emergency savings set aside for these inevitable repairs, which means they'll probably end up putting major maintenance on credit cards or taking out additional loans. This creates a vicious cycle where the car payment that was supposed to be manageable becomes the trigger for a debt spiral that can take years to escape. You'll see people with pristine $70 zero trucks sitting in their driveways while they frantically search the couch cushions for gas money. It's like wearing a Rolex while eating instant noodles. Technically impressive, but missing the point entirely. The fuel costs alone for these massive vehicles can approach what people used to pay for entire car payments just a decade ago. When you're driving a truck that gets 15 miles per gallon in real-world conditions and gas prices are bouncing between $3 and $5 a gallon, you're looking at fuel costs that can easily exceed $400 a month for someone with a typical commute. Add in the occasional road trip or weekend adventure, and that number climbs even higher. But here's where the math gets really interesting, and by interesting, I mean absolutely terrifying from a financial planning perspective. Let's run the numbers on a typical scenario that most people never bother to calculate. Imagine someone buys a $55,000 truck with a 7-year loan at 6% interest. Their monthly payment comes out to about $800, which feels manageable compared to the $1,200 payment they would have faced with a shorter loan term. Over the life of that loan, they'll pay roughly $67,000 total. Add in insurance at $250 a month, and that's another $21,000 over 7 years. Factor in fuel costs of $350 a month, and we're talking about another $29,000. Maintenance and repairs over 7 years will easily run another $15,000, probably more. When you add it all up, this person will spend over $130,000 on transportation over 7 years, and at the end of those 7 years, they'll own a vehicle that's worth maybe $15. If they're lucky. They've essentially paid $130,000 for the privilege of driving a $15,000 truck. That's not transportation financing, that's wealth destruction with cup holders and heated seats. The most depressing part of this equation is what that same money could have done if it had been invested instead. If someone took that $800 monthly payment and put it into a simple index fund earning 8% annually, they'd have over $70,000 after 7 years. Not only would they have avoided the financial burden of the truck, they would have actually built wealth instead of erasing it. But here's the psychological trap that makes this cycle so hard to break. Once someone commits to these extreme car payments, they develop what I call automotive Stockholm Syndrome. They become emotionally attached to their financial captor. The truck isn't just transportation anymore, it's a reflection of who they are, their hard work, their success. The thought of driving something cheaper feels like admitting defeat or accepting a lower social status. This emotional attachment makes rational financial analysis nearly impossible. When someone suggests they could save hundreds of dollars a month by driving a reliable used vehicle, they don't hear a practical financial strategy, they hear an attack on their self-worth and their right to enjoy what they've earned. They'll defend their truck payment with the same passion they'd use to defend their family, even though that truck payment might be standing in the way of actually providing for their family's future. The automotive industry understands this psychology better than most people understand themselves. They've poured billions into researching exactly how to trigger these emotional responses and turn them into signed loan agreements. Walk into any dealership and you'll notice they don't spend much time talking about total cost of ownership or the opportunity cost of capital. Instead, they focus on monthly payments, instant gratification, and social status. The sales process has been polished to overcome every rational objection a buyer might raise. Worried about the payment being too high, let's stretch the term. Concerned about reliability? Here's an extended warranty you can finance. Nervous about depreciation? Don't sweat it, you'll probably want to trade it in for something newer in a few years anyway. So there you have it. The mystery of how people are managing these insane car payments isn't really a mystery at all. It's a carefully choreographed system of stretched-out loan terms, emotional hooks, and financial acrobatics that would make a circus performer jealous. People aren't actually affording these payments in any meaningful sense, they're just kicking the financial can further down the road while convincing themselves they deserve that shiny truck. The next time you spot someone driving a vehicle that costs more than your house, remember this: they're probably eating cereal for dinner to make it work, and maybe, just maybe, that reliable used car sitting in your driveway isn't looking so bad after all.